right? And we're using shomen here. Shomen, right? And to each other, slowly, right? Okay. That was exciting. All right. What I would like to actually work on today, I think we started doing Kihon yesterday, so I think we'll do a few more Kihon and as a warm-up. And then I want to work on a little bit of sword mechanics. So we'll begin with some Kihon, and then we'll get rid of these things and get a real man's weapon. My apologies to the Iaido sensei, Miss Burke. So anyway, let's give a, let's get to Joe. Make sure everyone has Joe. Yesterday we did the first 4. Kihon, let's go ahead and we'll start that from the top and go through the first 6 or 8. Okay? So let's line up across the back wall and give us some room to come forward with our strikes. And quick review, Hante Kamai, what we're doing here in the classical version, I'm in a Hanmi rather than foot up, so my body is tilted a little bit. My hips are twisted a little forward though, so that I'm still in a forward pushing posture. The stick is a little off center, if you notice. If I have it straight on and I draw it straight back, I'll hit myself. So I'm going to have it a little bit offline just so that it clears the hip. So my center is here in front of my body. My center to combat is still towards my opponent. So here, I'm going to cup the hand, draw back. I'm not going to pull this hand back. I'm going to leave this hand out and strike with a pushing motion. If you notice, the stick is now off of my other hip. So it's actually going to slightly switch sides as my body changes. Gyakute the same. No hand changes. Just here. Hikiotoshi here in front of you. Hand is just relaxed state. Don't want space between this. Holding this up, you want to let this relax so that it's almost right touching your thigh. That motion. This is the biggest strike in Jodo. This tip of this Jo traces a gigantic arc. You don't want to make a small strike. You may feel like that's really quick, and if you don't have to step, that's probably okay. But if you're going to step to reach your target, then you might as well have a big strike as a little strike that takes the same amount of time. And we did Kaishizuke, where we cup the hand and drive the motion by twisting our hips. If I twist my hips, my hands naturally change position. So from here, twist the hips like so. And I've been taught to go ahead and leave the hand back here. Some people, when they turn the hand, they do this, but there's really no reason to. If I do this and I'm here and I start coming forward, the hand naturally turns over as it passes the hip. So you can just simply come to here and you get your grip right here prior to making contact. So those are the first 4 we did yesterday. The first new Kihon today is called Gyakutezuke. Gyakutezuke starts Hante Kamai. When you draw up here, notice that I've twisted my body once again to the side. If I drop it down, I'm here. So really, very much the same motion, except I stop here. The stick is right over the top of my head. So I've got a shield guarding my center line. When I step forward to strike with this, I'm going to square up want to make sure this doesn't change lines. If it's here, I could run into it. But so it's over my head, Jodan in this hand, boom, drawing straight back. Some styles go to the side. My teacher teaches to reestablish the shield over your center line and then strike forward just like Honte. So let's work on, we'll do the first 4, we'll add that 5th one, and then we'll pick up maybe some more. Okay? So together. Honte ni kamae. Honte uchi. Yoi. Hajime. Hey. 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 Oops. Backwards. Hey. 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 Yame. Motoi. Gyakute ni kamae. Gyakute uchi. Oi. Hajime. Hey. 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 Backwards. Hey. 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 Yame. When we call yame, change the hand to here. Zanshin. Motoi. Straighten up the lines. Hikiotoshi ni kamae. Hikiotoshi uchi. Hajime. Hey. Come straight to the eyes. Hey. 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 And back. Hey. 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 Yame. Motoi. Honte ni kamae. Gyakute zu. Yoi. Make sure it's up over your head, straight. Hajime. Hold. Hey. Hold. Hey. Hold. Hey. Hold. Hey. Yame. Motoi. Next one we want to take a look at is Makiotoshi. And Makiotoshi is an interesting method. We did Hikiotoshi. And yesterday we talked a little bit about with Hikiotoshi. Delson, can I get you to... So when you do Hikiotoshi, you have from Segan. Hikiotoshi with the sword in front of you, and you have this motion of sliding, okay? So what that does is the slide accelerates the stick. And what the mechanism physically is that you have a long lever, and as you slide in, it becomes a very short lever. So you're going from distal to proximal, and it accelerates the sword, even without a lot of body movement. Follow through should be about 3 feet to the side, about 6 feet back. So that direction, which is 22.5 degrees. Well, you take 45 and you double the length, it's going to be 22.5 degrees. I don't think that's really that important, but that's where it is. Okay? Now, Makiotoshi uses this same method. So if you strike Makiotoshi, what I'm going to do is you have that same slide at the end, but there's another slide in Makiotoshi, because Makiotoshi means a winding drop. when I do this motion here, what am I doing? I'm coming from proximal to distal. So if going that direction accelerates the sword, well, doing it the other way is going to take the acceleration out of the sword. So you're actually slowing the sword down with this wind up here. You also can catch him on his toes, which is really nice. Then, once he gets up to the top of this sine wave, you come forward and drop again. The motion of Makiotoshi, the forward motion, first off, I want to get my hands back. Hands are by my cheek. Because I don't want my hands here where he can slide that sword straight down and take off fingers. So, zah. Now, if I didn't even catch the sword, he's going to miss me because I stepped back. So, don't worry about that. I'm worried about controlling this swordsman and his whole body. So, when I start to come forward, the motion is really this. I wound it up, I'm going to wind it down. It's a downward motion. It's not a circle. If I try to go in a circle like this, power doesn't apply in a circle. Power goes in straight lines. So from here, the straight line is there. Stepping forward creates a forward movement. The stick just drops. And in the middle of that motion, from this winding motion, remember we talked about the hands being lined up this way yesterday. So if my hands are lined up this way and I roll them, now they're both pointing at the ceiling. So how can I put downward power if my fingers are pointing at the ceiling? I change my grip here. Here I'm underneath the sword. Now I'm on top of the sword. And I can drop them into that back corner. So it's the same mechanisms as Hikyotoshi, but kind of double. So Makiotoshi is a fun technique. I was told a story about Kaminoda Sensei that when he started Jo, he was a very highly ranked kendo practitioner. And after he learned Makiotoshi, he would come into kendo, and as soon as he touched weapons, nobody could stop him from doing that. And he got pretty bored with kendo after that. So anyway, let's try it together. Makiotoshi. Hey, honte ni kamae. Makiotoshi. Oi. Hajime. Hey. 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 One more. Hey. Hey, yame motoi. Let's come back. And we'll practice the next 3 Kihon because we did a little bit of that yesterday. So, real briefly, with solo practice, the Kihon, imagine a sword cutting right down your center line. I'm going to step off the line. Once I do that, I'm not worried about that sword anymore. The sword is going to be aimed right here. So this is the cutting part, monochi. So if I'm here, the sword's here, that's going to be that configuration. When I step to the side, I come in here, and that crosses at that place. So really kind of easy mechanics of that. So first trap, this is called kuritsuke. Now, this motion of keeping the hand in the center of the jo, it's in the center here. When I do kuritsuke, I'm really doing this. I'm just bringing this hand up to Jodo. So if you've ever done Shihonage, this is the same motion. And it allows me to do some funny stuff with the jo. I think we showed this a little last time, but coming up here, I know where Jodon is here. I know where my backhand's going to meet the stick also. So Just one motion here. At this point, there are 3 different responses we did yesterday. One of them is to follow the sword down. The trap that we're doing is with the back heel turned so that I can root the Jo in my hip joint. If I'm standing sideways to it, this is the way I was taught in Kendo Federation style, is that there's not anything really behind the Jo. Here, there's a power base behind it. It's rooted. So there's a little bit of a hand slide. If you watch where this hand is, it slides from middle to about a third. And the reason for that is posture here. I want to get as much Jo out away from me to control that sword. Not too much, but I got to have about here. Okay? So, Kuritsuke, that. When I come back up, I let the stick come back to my natural position overhead. You'll see this sometimes. If you have someone, think about if you bring your arms out here. Now, Roger is taller than I am, but if he's going to cut me, he's going to be in this place. This is where his hands are. And you can see that from Jodan, it's a downward angle. Okay? If you have, normally if you're going to have some kind of angle like that, if he's cutting very high or I catch him real early, maybe I'll catch him here. But normally if he's cutting through, his hands will be about here. We'll talk about the sword relationship later. So I'm going to go ahead and cover all 3 of these traps first, and then we'll practice all 3 of them. Second one is the same entry. This time you throw forward, and this is just Gyakute Uch, second strike. So from here, make sure the Jo doesn't come around behind you. Both hands move together. Same this one, same this one. Third one, Tayatari. This goes up in the air and I slide my stick so that this hand comes to the eyes, this hand comes to Suigetsu. Feet are together. Push with the lower hand. Okay? And the way I do Tai-Atari in practice is to come here, throw that up in the air. This should be vertical. Push here and then slowly bring this down. If you get in the habit of pushing with the top hand, your back hand goes backwards, your hips go backwards, you lose the power, and you also have a little danger of maybe hitting someone in the eye or having the sword get out of your way and you end up like that. So pushing down with the top hand is not really helpful in my experience. All right, so let's do it together. Let's do the, we're going to start with the Kuritsuke. Okay, Kuritsuke, oi, Hajime. Hey, 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 one more. Hey, Yame, Motoi. Let's come back. Hey, Kuri Hanash, oi, Hajime. Hey, 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 Yame, Motoi, and come back. The third trap is Tai-Atari. Oi, Hajime. Hold. 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 And to the eyes. Yame. Zanshin. Motoi. All right. So we did the drill yesterday of responses to Tai-Atari and Kuritsuke, Kuri Hanash, and what the swordsman might be doing differently to create these situations. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the sword, and we'll work on this some. Dale, can I borrow you for a second? We did, Joe. We did Tachio Toshi. And the thing that I thought very interesting when we did Tachio Toshi, here. Here. Good. Okay. Is in this motion right here. Okay? Go ahead. So that's Tachio Toshi. Let's go ahead and we'll stop after that first trap. Hey! Now, what happened, I'm sorry, I said we were going to stop after that trap. But what I was going to showing is exactly what happened here. Is that we've kind of, some of us get into a habit right here of feeling pressure here. That there's a weight. And now, go ahead and do the technique. And he's powering his way through the weight. Now, as a teaching method, sometimes, just do regular Kuritsuke. Okay. Now, go ahead and do Kuritsuke. Why are you having trouble?
Just get through it all.
Okay, just walk. Oh, there. So, what I just taught him was that he can't pick me up. That if I'm out here, I can be one hand. Go ahead and try to pick me up. He's going to have a lot of trouble. Now just walk past me. Okay, so there's a problem that comes, it's not just in the martial arts, it's when children learn a language. It's over application of a rule. So you learn a rule and it's going to apply to everything. So a child will make mistakes in a language because they're applying the rule when it's actually an exception. Or they're taught one rule that's really not a rule. It was just something that helps when you're learning. And in the martial arts you have the same thing. When I cut here, if I am testing his posture, testing his movement, trying to make sure that he's not trying to be a weightlifter and pick me up with his arms, then I might put some pressure here. However, I'm not doing kata. Kata requires riai. It requires some sort of combative rationale, reasoning. It's got to make sense. It's got to be something that portrays what would happen in a combat. So, hey. I mean, that's really what I would be doing, is I'm going to cut here. As soon as my sword is stopped, I'm going to cut somewhere else. This is not a sword. This is a piece of wood. We sometimes forget that this is supposed to be a sword. So, I'm going to show you something here now. This is not a sword. This is an iaito, so it's not sharp. But, and we'll go real slow. So if we're going to do Kuritsuke here, my next move is going to be to get this sword out and try maybe cut him somewhere else. Maybe I'll cut him here. If his movements are programmed to the kata says I do this, or in all my training before, I feel some pressure here, and then I move through the pressure. Go ahead and move through the pressure. And that feels really good and it's satisfying. The problem is, that's not what a swordsman is after. I'm not after fighting with the hilt of the sword against the stick. I've got a long, sharp thing here. My job is to put the sharp part into that guy. So, okay. Now, I tried to come to Jodo, and we got a perfect Kuritsuke. So, what happens if I do this? Now, going to Jodo, I'm in range. What I'd really like to do, assuming he doesn't counter me, is right there. That's a great target. I like that. It's nice and soft. I can, no offense, but it doesn't have any bones. So I can come through it real good. So I'm really not taking a step back. I'm just raising the sword to Jodo again so I can cut. And if he follows me to Jodo and starts to move, now I got a problem. I don't like being bent over backwards. I'm going to step out and absorb that technique. And he's going to trap me into my hips. So what happens in Kuritsuke is simply that I'm holding my ground and I'm going to cut him. One of the comments that actually we had 3 of the seniors from our Jodo group go to Japan in November, and we all got the same comment that our sword was too heavy, too violent. It should be lighter. And we think about all of the teachers that we have, the Japanese, really the top level sensei, and their sword feels light. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean it feels light? It means that they're not hanging on us, they're trying to cut. So, hey! Now I have a problem, right? He's going to follow me, drop me into here. What happens in Kuri Hanash, the second one? Second one, hey! Now, what if I were to come back here? That's a pretty good, it's a reset. You know, this didn't work out the way I wanted. I'm going to hit the reset button. I'll go back and try again. If you've ever done Ranai, you do that about 4 times in a row. It's like, bam, oh, well, that didn't work. Let me try this again. Hey, oh, that didn't work. Let me try it over here. Let me try it over here. So, second response. As I'm stepping back from here, I've already moved my foot. The trick, or actually I should say the principle behind these 3 trap movements is glue. As soon as this touches here, he's now glued to the end of the stick. If I do this, I have to recover backwards. If I am stepping back, he's going to throw me and do Kuri Hanash. Well, what else can I do? Taitari has a few different interpretations. I've seen this interpreted as, at this point, I'm going to try to come around behind him. That's a good target too. I cut his kidneys and he's done. So 45, a little more off the line. If you're here and I cut straight down, I've got you. If you're here and I happen to cut straight down, you're okay. So yeah. So that's the purpose of this. And so the sword path, you're cleared of that sword path. Okay? Now, you can do Taitara aggressively. In other words, I start to raise a sword, do Taitara, whoa! And I've got to do this just to keep me from getting knocked in the head. If I don't, he's going to control me anyway. So, here. Now if I try to come around behind him, he's going to trap me, and I'm using the hilt to protect myself a little bit here. If I don't get the hilt there, I really kind of don't want that stick to just come down and crack me in the head. So the problem is making the adjustment from training mode, testing your kamae, saying here, feel that? Okay, now you initiate your motion, to reacting to uchidachi, so that when I cut, I've got to get up. You know, those that feeling is going to be keyed off of the Jo being glued to that point and following it. And what it requires is that when you use power, that your power comes from walking, not from your shoulders. If you try to use your shoulders here and you push up when I do this, fine, push up. You don't know how far up to go. But if you're here and I go up and you go, keep this contact, keep the contact, whoa, then you can follow me wherever I go. Just maintain that point of contact after you've met. So let's do a little drill because you're standing around. And let's, one person grab a Joe. We did this yesterday, we'll do it again. One person grab a Joe, other person grab a sword. And I want you to go back and forth. Go through that sequence of 3 different reactions of down, back, coming around. Try to keep that contact with the Joe and match that motion. Let Uchidachi, the swordsman, lead the movement. Okay? Let's so every other person grab a sword and we'll try it.